Hey everyone, so I'm going to do a live chat today on questions and answers about gluten. So I've written about it so much. I wrote about it extensively in the Omni Diet. Daniel and I both wrote about it together in the Brain Warriors Way, but there's still a lot of people who have questions about gluten and asking, okay, I don't know if you guys can see me. I'm in my car doing this live chat today. So, but still lots and lots of questions about gluten. Why should you cut it out? Should you cut it out? Does everyone need to cut it out? And what's the problem with it? So I'm going to start doing live chats because I get so many questions from you guys about, all these different topics. I'm going to start trying to lump them together. And today I'm going to cover gluten. But I want to just point out first that when I do these live chats and answer these questions, because some of you send me some pretty extensive medical questions, and when you do that, I need to just let you know, I am not going to actually this is not intended to be like any type of medical advice. If you are having medical issues, you do need to see a doctor. This is simply general information to answer your questions. I know this lighting is really terrible in my car, but I don't know what else to do. So this is just very basic information to help you understand what gluten is, what it does, what it's in, and the basic questions that you have. If you are having serious symptoms you think that are related to celiac disease or to gluten, you definitely should see a physician. So first of all, let's start with what is gluten. Gluten, literally, the Latin word for gluten literally is glue. Okay, so it's the sticky substance that's found in gluten-containing grains, things like wheat, barley, rye, kamut, bulgur, spelt. It's what gives bread its elasticity, so that chewiness, that doughiness that makes you actually want more of it. And gluten is actually addictive. It truly is addictive. So when gluten actually breaks down with stomach acid, when it's digested with stomach acid, it releases a substance that can cross into the blood-brain barrier, and it actually works on the same part of the brain that morphine and cocaine work on. Maybe not as strongly, but it does, and it makes you want it more and more and more. So it's part of why bread is so hard to give up, okay? So gluten is found in... because one of the questions that people sent me is, where is it found? What foods is it found in? So here's one of the things. It's found in most commercially made breads, cakes, cookies, cereals, pasta, other, grain-based foods. But it's found in a lot more than that because it's hidden in things like salad dressings, lunch meats. How about cosmetics? Or the sticky stuff on envelopes, the glue on envelopes. It's found in bacon, sausage, chicken, so basically processed meats. It's found in almost all like processed baked goods, even if you're not thinking that it's like a wheat-based product, like most of your processed foods contain it unless they say gluten-free. So then the next question is, what types of gluten-related disorders are there? So gluten's associated with celiac disease. That's the obvious one, right? So about 3 million Americans suffer with celiac disease. That's a very serious disorder. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But it's also associated with type 1 diabetes, Hashimoto's thyroid disease, and like other types of autoimmune disorders. So that's what they've been connecting gluten to with health, related to health. So it can also trigger things like flu-like symptoms, psychological disturbances, skin rashes, acne, inflammation, alopecia, which is baldness, arthritis, and food addiction. So that for the reason that we just talked about when it breaks down with stomach acid. So what is, one of the questions is, what is celiac specifically? So celiac disease, formerly known as celiac sprue, it's an autoimmune disease that tells the body to attack and destroy villi. So villi are these little finger-like things in your intestines. What I want you to think of them like is, they're not straws, but I want you to think of them like straws for a second, okay? So if you have these little straws in your intestines are these tubes, you have these little straws, so if you've got food that's going through your intestines, it's being broken down, it's going to digest, break down into these nutrients that are able to cross in, so your body can use it. The purpose of these villi, these little finger-like straws, they're not straws, but let's just call them that for all intents and purposes, is to suck up, be able to absorb these nutrients. Well, what celiac disease is, when gluten comes in contact with the villi, this reaction happens through a series of like chemical reactions. The villi flatten. They go flat. Okay, so your straws like basically go flat, and they cannot absorb the nutrients. That's what celiac disease is. Okay, so it's an autoimmune disorder, and what ends up happening, people suffer from anywhere from mild to extreme malnutrition. Babies can have failure to thrive, all sorts of problems that can happen that, with, you don't get essential vitamins, minerals, nutrients, things like that. So, according to the Center for Celiac Research and Treatment, remember that, the Center for Celiac Research and Treatment, because one of the questions was, where can I get more information on celiac disease, and also on, another question was, where can I get more information if I don't have celiac disease, but I think I might be gluten sensitive? That's where you can get the information. Center for Celiac Research and Treatment is where you can go. They have a website. You can also get it from most functional medicine doctors have a lot of information. They can really help you with this. So, about 3 million Americans suffer from celiac disease. About an additional 18 million people suffer from gluten sensitivity. What's the difference between celiac and gluten sensitivity? Well, gluten sensitivity means that your intestines may not be being damaged as extremely as if you have celiac disease. Apparently gluten, now they believe, actually does damage to pretty much everybody, but not to the extreme as if you have celiac disease. It's not great for anyone's intestines, supposedly, but with celiac, you're getting this extreme where you get malnutrition. So with gluten sensitivity, though, you still get the symptoms. You still get those autoimmune-like reactions. You're still getting, like, I know many people, including myself, I feel terrible. I actually had Hashimoto's, didn't know it, didn't know, why. There are people who have flu-like symptoms. They feel headaches the next day, migraines. I know with me, my mouth actually peels. Like, it's really weird. I get like these like weird like peeling reactions in the skin on the roof of my mouth. Abdominal pain is a really common one. Rashes, eczema, fatigue, and mental fogginess. So another question we ended up having was related to mental issues, okay, or psychological issues. So one of the questions was, I think I feel brain fog when I eat bread and other products with gluten. Does gluten cause brain issues? The answer is yes. For a lot of people, it does. So this is directly from our book, The Brain Warrior's Way. This was written by my husband in The Brain Warrior's Way. So I'm quoting him. I often say that, as a nurse, I'm not going to give you medical advice. I'm going to report to you things that I know that are either studies or that come directly from my husband or other doctors that work with us, or from information that's out there, but I'm not giving you medical advice. I hope that makes sense. So this is directly written by my husband in our book that we wrote together, The Brain Warrior's Way. He said, did you know that for some people, gluten can literally mess with their minds? There's scientific reports of people having psychotic episodes or feeling anxious or depressed when they've ingested gluten. And these references are on our website at Amen Clinics, or you can get them also in The Brain Warrior's Way. When these people eliminate wheat or other gluten sources such as barley, rice, spelt, imitation meats, soy sauce from their and other sources from their diets, their stomach aches and brains function better. About 40%. Oh, here's the problem. There's about 40% more gluten in bread today than there was 50 years ago due to hybridization. I wrote about this extensively in the Omni Diet. It's hidden in salad dressings, sauces. We already talked about this. All of the processed meats. And so you can find it in so many different things. It also is associated with insulin resistance. But what my husband actually reported was that, and there's references for this, it can cause lower blood flow to the brain. I always have trouble saying that. Brain blood flow. Anyways, associated with a subset of patients with schizophrenic and mood disorders. So the symptoms can sort of mimic that, and that's why we will often put people that show up with those types of symptoms, we'll put them on a gluten-free diet to see if it gets better. Associated with cerebellar abnormalities, 40% of idiopathic sporadic ataxia. So basically movement disorders. Let me just make that easy. Movement disorders. Can also be associated with seizures, intractable seizures, and hippocampal atrophy. So the part of your brain where your memories are associated. And so that's why in our clinics, which is a psychiatric clinic, people are always like, why do you guys care about gluten-free diet so much? Because what affects your body affects your brain. And, how your brain works is going to affect the rest of your health. They're not disconnected. And we find that when we put people on gluten-free diets, not everybody. So one of the questions is, should everybody do this? Well, we would love for everybody to try it because that's how we know who benefits and who doesn't. We do find that most people do get some benefit. How much is dependent on the person. But when people are suffering from brain fog, migraine headaches, schizophrenic type symptoms, ADD, they're like hyper or depressed or all, a lot of different symptoms, joint pain, chronic pain, all of these different things. What we want you to do is just try going off of it for a few weeks. Literally, like cut all of it out. You got to pay attention. Cut it out. Then try going back on it within a few weeks. Usually you're going to notice a pretty radical change. Most people report feeling dramatically better. And then what happens is it's almost like an alcoholic who quits drinking and then they have that drink and it hits them twice as hard when they drink again. So you feel it like really, really badly when you do it again. So that's why we do that. One of the questions was, how do I know if I have celiac disease? You have to get a blood test, okay? So it's identified through a blood test, and what you see is the presence of antibodies against a protein called transglutaminase, okay? But that's not definitive. After that, if it shows a positive, then you go, and sometimes you can have false positives and negatives, whatever. You have to get a biopsy of the intestines. So that's why, unless you actually have celiac disease and you're getting really sick, we just recommend doing an elimination diet. It's pretty clear. So does everyone need to do it? Does everyone need to do it to the same degree? Does everyone suffer from the same degree of issues? Not in our experience. But does anyone suffer from going off of gluten? Not in our experience. Other than it can be expensive if you are looking for everything to be certified gluten-free. And that is going to be one of the questions coming up, so pay attention. Someone here says, there's no way I can cut gluten out completely. I don't know why they're saying that. There's no way I can cut gluten out completely, but if I was to start, which foods should I start to cut out? First of all, I'm not sure why they're saying they can't cut gluten out completely. Is it because of cost or is it because you're addicted to it? I'm not sure. Okay, so if it's because of cost, I understand. And that's probably because you're reaching for gluten-free food replacements, most of which aren't all that healthy anyways. All of these baked goods and cookies and chips and breads and whatever, most of them are crap, pardon my French, but they just are. They're loaded with other stuff that's not good for you. Doing a gluten-free diet for it to be the healthiest is really about going on whole foods. It's really about not eating all that stuff. It's really about just eating whole foods that grow on plants, that are not made in plants, a little bit of really clean protein, but really avoiding the processed foods that we really wanted you to avoid to begin with. So that's really what I want to point out here. Those lunch meats and things like that, processed meats, we really don't want you ingesting a lot of those to begin with. And both of our books, The Omni Diet and The Brain Warrior's Way, talk about ways to do that. The one that I really spend the most time coaching on is the cookbook, The Brain Warrior's Way cookbook. Every single chapter, I give tips on how to do it on a budget, how to do it and save time, simple recipes. How do you do this? The entire book is gluten-free, corn-free, soy-free, dairy-free, extremely low glycemic. So if you're looking for an easy way to do it and do it, make it cost-effective, that's how. Now, back to the question. So there's no way I can cut it out completely, but if I was to start, which food should I start to cut out? It's a little bit of a complicated question because here's the answer. Gluten is gluten. So I don't know what this person's issue is. If you're celiac, then to say you can't cut it out completely is like saying if you have a peanut allergy, you can't eat small amounts of peanuts if you have a peanut allergy, right? It's like if you're celiac, you need to cut it out, completely. But if you're not celiac and you're just feeling like it's not making you feel good, then the answer to that question is really to be really frank, depends on how crappy you want to feel. Okay? I'm not going to say I never eat gluten because that would be dishonest. If you ever see me out, I mean, on occasion, I eat something with gluten in it. And I pretty much know that if I eat more than just a few bites of something on occasion, I'm not going to feel that great the next day. So it's like one of those things where like 95.5 at least for me, and gluten is probably the thing I pay the closest attention to. Do I ever ingest gluten? Yeah, I do. Okay, very small amounts. But really the answer is it depends on how crappy you want to feel. You're in charge of your own health. No one's going to be more invested than you are. That's just the brutal truth. Okay? So if you're just sensitive to it, you don't have celiac, just ask yourself, do I want to feel like crap tomorrow? And ask yourself, what are the symptoms I'm feeling? Do I have headaches? Do I have joint pain, chronic pain? Is it slowing me down at work? Is it causing me to not spend time with my children? Associate it to what's going on in your life. I already answered the question on how do I know if I have celiac disease. To learn more about celiac disease, I'm going to answer that again. Center for Celiac Research and Treatment, or ask a functional medicine doctor. We have several that work for us. If you really think you need medical help, we've got several functional medicine doctors and naturopaths that work for us. And they take Skype appointments if you are looking like there's something really going on with you. And what is a gluten-free diet? Well, it literally means you're avoiding all the things that I talked about earlier. You have to look for things that if you're going to be buying packaged foods, that's where it gets expensive. You either have to read the ingredients and know what gluten is in. And in order to get a full list of that, like I said, you can go on our websites or you can get for $20 or check it out in the library if you need to. The Omni Diet or the Brain Warriors Way will have more extensive lists of what ingredients you need to avoid if you're buying packaged foods. To be absolutely certain if you're celiac, then that's where it gets pricey, is because it needs to say gluten-free. Okay? In order to be certified gluten-free, the reason it's pricey, it's really sad that you have to pay that much money to be healthy. But the truth is, because it's got to be, just like with peanuts, people with peanut allergies have to buy things that are not packaged in plants that contain peanuts, where anything else is, there's any peanuts that exist in that place, that are stored there. Same thing with celiacs. They can't eat foods that are cooked in a kitchen where there's any gluten at all. So when there's food that's being packaged, it's got to be packaged separately. It can't be in any area where there's any gluten-containing foods. That's why it gets pricey. And it's got to have a special certification. So my suggestion, if you're not doing it because of the price tag, then my suggestion is avoid processed foods that need to be certified gluten-free. Okay, focus on whole foods. You still have to be a little bit careful if you are celiac, because there are some foods that are known to have cross-contamination, like oats. Oats, which are technically not gluten-containing foods, but because the fields are often close to each other, there might be some carryover from the wind or whatever, or they might rotate fields, and you might get some cross-contamination. So you have to be careful. So that's where you need a doctor or someone who knows, how to guide you. And yeah, it can be a little bit more pricey because of that, and that's actually kind of sad. But that's where I would just focus on whole foods. And that's why I spent so much time on the Brain Warriors Way cookbook, making it a coaching guide like that, so that it doesn't have to be this horrifying process of like super expensive. And here's the truth. It's got to be a priority for you. Okay, because if it's a priority, you're going to figure out how to do it. You're going to cut out a Starbucks. You're going to cut out, some popcorn at the movies, which is crap for you anyways. Or you're going to cut out going to the movies once a month and figure out a way to make it happen. All right? Usually my experience is there's something somewhere that you can, cut back on a little bit, because eating healthy, according to studies done at Harvard School of Public Health, actually only costs about $1.50 to $1.90 a day more per person. If you got 6 kids, that's a little pricey, but it can be done. What ends up happening is that people are they're wasting too much food. So again, coaching tips are in, like I said, you can check it out at the library if you can't afford to buy the book, but lots of coaching tips, both in the Omni Diet and in Brain Warriors Way cookbook. How do you do that and not waste food? Okay, this live chat is, I don't have time to do that in this live chat. Maybe I'll do one on that for you. But how do you do that and not waste food and save money, and not buy expensive gluten-free products, which are not good for you? Next question, who should eat gluten-free? Let's see, where am I at? Okay. Who should eat gluten-free? anyone with celiac, anyone with gluten sensitivity, all the symptoms that I just talked about, try cutting it out for several weeks, see if you get better, and then try eating it in a few weeks and see if you feel really bad. And that's usually what ends up happening. And don't just eat one like piece of bread. Like you need to spend a day eating gluten, a day or two, and then like see what happens. It'll usually hit you really heavy. So if you've suffered from the list we just talked about, try it out. If you have autoimmune disorders like Hashimoto's, diabetes, brain fog, depression, ADD, ADHD, just try it. Try what we just talked about. And let's see. This question's a little odd to me. Are gluten-free products safe for individuals with wheat allergies? That goes right back to what I said. Gluten doesn't help anyone. And I don't know what she really means by that. Are gluten-free products safe for people with wheat allergies? Yeah, because it doesn't contain wheat. But I'd still avoid the things that are like processed foods. I would stick with whole foods, right? As much as you can. And then let's see, is it possible to eat a gluten-free diet without breaking the bank? Exactly what I just talked about. I just answered that. So I hope this was helpful. Share it if it was. Here's what I would like for you to do. Send me your questions ahead of time, whether it's on my page or in my private mailbox. It's getting to the point where I used to answer all of your questions, privately, individually, and love you guys. You guys are sending me a lot of great questions. My page is growing to a point where it's getting really hard to do that. So it's easier for me to answer your questions in bulk this way and have you share it or, pass it on to the person who asked the question. All right. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.